Have you ever walked away from a conversation and then spent the next 3 hours explaining yourself to someone who was no longer even in the room? You replayed every sentence. You imagined what you should have said. You built an entire courtroom inside your mind, gathered evidence, prepared your defense, and tried to prove that your feelings were reasonable. Maybe you said no to something you did not want to do. Maybe you asked for more respect. Maybe you ended a relationship that had been draining you for years. And instead of simply standing by your decision, you felt an overwhelming need to make the other person understand. So you explained. Then you explained your explanation. Then you softened it, apologized for it, and added one final paragraph to make sure nobody could possibly think you were selfish, difficult, cold, dramatic, ungrateful, or wrong. But here is the truth. Most women discover far too late. The more desperately you try to prove that you deserve to make a decision, the more you communicate that the decision is still open for negotiation. And the moment a woman stops explaining herself unnecessarily, something changes. Her voice changes, her posture changes, the way people respond to her changes. Not because she becomes cruel, not because she stops caring, but because she stops presenting her life as a case that must be approved by a jury. She stops asking permission to exist as herself. And that is where her power begins. This video is not about becoming silent, emotionally unavailable, or impossible to communicate with. It is about understanding the difference between explaining yourself from clarity and explaining yourself from fear. Because one builds connection. The other slowly teaches people that your boundaries are negotiable. And by the end of this video, you may recognize that some of the longest explanations you have ever given were not attempts to communicate. They were attempts to avoid rejection. The invisible habit that makes you feel powerless. Over-explaining rarely looks like weakness from the inside. From the inside, it often feels like responsibility. You tell yourself that you are being thoughtful, fair, mature. You want everyone to have the full context. You want them to understand your intentions. You want to prevent conflict before it begins. So when someone questions your decision, you immediately provide more information. I can't come tonight because I've had a difficult week, and I didn't sleep well yesterday, and I have an early morning tomorrow. I hope you don't think I don't care. I really wanted to come. Maybe I can make it up to you next weekend. When a simple sentence would have been enough. I won't be able to come tonight. You are not lying in the longer version. Everything you said may be completely true. But beneath all those details, there is often an unspoken message. Please do not be upset with me. Please do not misunderstand me. Please confirm that I am still a good person. And that is how an explanation quietly becomes a request for emotional permission. The problem is not that you are communicating. The problem is that you are handing the other person the authority to decide whether your reasons are sufficient. The moment you offer 10 reasons for a boundary, someone who does not respect that boundary will begin examining the reasons. You said you were tired, but you went out last weekend. You said you were busy, but this will only take an hour. You said you needed space, but you were online. Now the conversation is no longer about your decision. It has become a debate about whether you are allowed to make it. And because you entered the courtroom, you are expected to remain there until the other person is satisfied. Power begins when you recognize that not every question is a sincere request for understanding. Sometimes a question is an attempt to reopen a door you have already closed. Why so many women learn to explain everything? Most women do not wake up one morning and consciously decide to over-explain. The habit is often learned much earlier. A little girl says she does not want to hug someone. She is told, "Don't be rude." She says she does not like something. She is told, "Give me one good reason." She becomes upset. She is asked to justify why the situation hurt her. She says no. An adult demands an explanation. Over time, she learns that her instincts are not enough. Her discomfort is not enough. Her preference is not enough. To be taken seriously, she must build a convincing case. She learns to turn every feeling into an essay. She learns that being agreeable keeps the room peaceful. She learns that disappointment on another person's face means she has done something wrong. and so she becomes highly skilled at anticipating emotional reactions. She notices the slight change in someone's tone, the pause before they answer, the look of disapproval, the message that suddenly becomes shorter. And the moment she senses tension, she begins explaining. Not because she has done something wrong, but because her nervous system has learned that misunderstanding can be dangerous. For some women, this pattern developed in a home where love was conditional. Perhaps a parent became cold when disappointed. Perhaps affection was withdrawn until the child apologized. Perhaps the child had to manage the emotions of the adults around her. She learned that peace depended on her ability to say the right thing. She became the translator, the mediator, the easy daughter, the one who never caused problems. And then she carried that role into adulthood. She explains her workload to a manager who keeps demanding more. She explains her boundaries to a partner who keeps violating them. She explains her life choices to family members who have already decided not to understand. She thinks she is preventing conflict. But often, she is only postponing it while abandoning herself. Explanation and understanding are not the same thing. One of the hardest lessons to accept is that more explanation does not always create more understanding. Sometimes the other person already understands. They simply do not agree. They understand that you are tired. They just care more about what they want from you. They understand that the joke hurt you. They just do not want to take responsibility. They understand that you are ending the relationship. They just believe they should still have access to you. They understand your boundary perfectly. They are testing whether you will enforce it. This is why some conversations leave you feeling strangely exhausted. You keep searching for better words, softer words, more precise words. You believe that if you could only explain yourself correctly, the other person would finally respect your position. But the problem was never your vocabulary. The problem was that they benefited from pretending not to understand. Imagine that you tell someone, "I don't like being spoken to that way." They respond, "What exactly did I say?" You explain. They say, "That's not what I meant." You clarify that you are talking about the effect, not only the intention. They say you are too sensitive. You explain your history. They identify an inconsistency in your example. You correct the inconsistency. They question your tone. And 20 minutes later, you are defending your entire personality, while the original behavior has disappeared from the conversation. This is not communication. It is displacement. The focus has moved from what they did to whether you have the right to object. And every new explanation gives them another detail to challenge. Sometimes the most powerful response is not a better argument. It is returning to the original sentence. "I've told you what I'm not comfortable with. That decision is final. I'm not continuing this conversation if you speak to me that way. No anger, no performance, no second trial." The difference between privacy and secrecy. Many women fear that if they stop explaining themselves, they will become dishonest or emotionally closed. But privacy is not dishonesty. Privacy is the understanding that not everyone is entitled to complete access to your internal world. You can be honest without providing a full documentary. You can say, "I've decided to leave," without revealing every private thought that led to the decision. You can say, "That doesn't work for me," without presenting a timeline of past disappointments. You can say, "I'm not discussing that," without being guilty of hiding something. Secrecy is often motivated by deception. Privacy is motivated by discernment. A powerful woman does not share everything simply because someone asks. She considers whether the person has earned access. Will they treat the information with care? Are they trying to understand her, or are they collecting material to use later? Have they demonstrated respect for her boundaries? Or do they only become interested in her feelings when those feelings interfere with what they want? Not everyone asking for an explanation is asking in good faith. Some people want context. Some want control. Wisdom is learning to recognize the difference. What happens when you stop explaining? When you first stop over-explaining, you may not feel powerful. You may feel guilty. You may feel anxious. You may feel as though you have left a sentence unfinished. Someone asks why you cannot attend, and you say, "I'm not available." Then silence. Your mind immediately begins producing additional sentences. You want to fill the space. You want to reassure them. You want to prove that you have a legitimate reason, but instead you let the sentence stand, and then something interesting happens. The silence reveals information. A respectful person might say, "No problem. Maybe next time." An entitled person might continue pressing, "But what are you doing? Why can't you change it? Who are you going with? Why are you being so secretive?" By saying less, you see more. You discover who respects your decisions without requiring a performance. You discover who believes access to you is an entitlement. You discover who only accepts your boundaries when they personally approve of the reason. Overexplaining can hide these differences because it gives everyone enough emotional cushioning to appear reasonable. When you remove the cushion, people reveal how they actually respond to your autonomy. This is one reason silence can feel so powerful. It does not create someone's character. It exposes it. The woman who is always misunderstood. There is a painful irony in overexplaining. The woman who explains herself most often may still feel chronically misunderstood. She writes long messages. She gives context. She describes what she felt, what she meant, what she did not mean, and why she reacted the way she did. Yet people continue reducing her to a version she does not recognize. Why? Because understanding is not only created by information, it also requires willingness. A person can have every fact and still interpret you through their own resentment, insecurity, projection, or agenda. You could deliver the most perfect explanation of your life, and someone committed to misunderstanding you would still find a way. At a certain point, continuing to explain yourself becomes an attempt to manage another person's perception, and that is an impossible job. You cannot enter someone else's mind and rearrange the story they have chosen to tell about you. You cannot force a person to see your heart accurately. You cannot control which details they remember and which they ignore. You can only decide whether you will spend your life campaigning for a more favorable verdict. A woman becomes powerful when she accepts this. Some people will misunderstand her. Some will call her selfish when she stops sacrificing herself. Some will call her cold when guilt no longer controls her. Some will call her difficult when she becomes harder to exploit. Some will say she has changed, and they may be right. She has changed. She no longer confuses being understood with being permitted. The workplace, where overexplaining becomes expensive. Consider what happens in a professional setting. A woman presents an idea in a meeting. Someone challenges it. Instead of answering the specific question, she begins defending every decision that led to the idea. She adds disclaimers. "I could be wrong. This is only a thought. I haven't looked at every possible angle. Maybe this doesn't make sense." She is trying to appear collaborative, but the more she qualifies her own thinking, the less confidence others place in it. This does not mean she should pretend to know what she does not know. Confidence is not false certainty. It means stating what she knows without reducing its value before anyone else has responded. Compare these two statements. "I'm sorry if I'm missing something, and maybe this isn't the right direction, but I was thinking we could possibly try changing the onboarding process because some users seem confused." Now listen to this. User drop-off suggests the onboarding process is creating confusion. I recommend testing a simplified version. Same person, same idea, different energy. The second statement does not beg to be protected from disagreement. It invites a discussion without apologizing for existing inside it. Over-explaining at work can also appear when setting limits. "I'm sorry, but I don't think I can take on another project because I already have several deadlines, and I don't want you to think I'm not committed. I can try to work late, but I'm worried the quality might suffer." A clearer response would be, "I can take on the new project if we move one of my current deadlines. Which priority would you like me to adjust?" That is not rude, it is precise. It places the decision where it belongs. Powerful communication does not always mean saying less. It means removing the words that exist only to make your competence less threatening. Relationships, when explanations become negotiations. Nowhere is the urge to explain more intense than in romantic relationships. You tell someone that their inconsistency is hurting you. They say they have been busy. You explain that you understand they are busy, that you do not expect constant attention, that you are not trying to be demanding, that you respect their independence, and that you only want basic communication. By the time you finish, you have spent 10 minutes proving that you are not asking for too much. But the real question is simpler. Is this relationship meeting your needs? You do not need to convince someone that your needs are objectively reasonable before deciding whether a relationship works for you. People have different needs, different capacities, different standards. Compatibility is not a courtroom in which one person must be proven wrong. You can leave a relationship without establishing that the other person is evil.